Those girls were watching a scene from a horror film called Evil Dead 1, which broke all financial records in the cinema and as a home video when released 4 years ago. Yet it was attacked by some as being no more than a video nasty, and the Department of Public Prosecutions took court action to ban it. The action actually failed, but the arguments will rage again when its sequel, Evil Dead 2, hits the cinema screens next week. Its American director, Sam Raimi, is with us tonight, and we're also joined by Gerald Howarth, who would like to see films like that banned. Sam, let me just ask you first of all as to why it's important to show people being dismembered. There was actually a scene in Evil Dead 1, I don't know if any of our audience has seen it at all, but of a woman being raped by, of all things, a tree. Now, how necessary is it to have those kind of scenes in horror films today?
Well, I don't think it's necessary specifically to have any particular type of scene in a horror picture. There is a particular sequence in the woods with a woman where the trees come to life and she is attacked by them, it's true. And
she was raped by them, by the looks of things.
Well, you don't really see anything, so it's really up to the imagination of the viewer.
I actually watched the film today. I was told to watch it today. It was pretty clear to me what was going on.
Well, okay. Well, there was a scene in the picture that did have a sequence of a woman in the woods, and her clothes were certainly torn off, and it was a fantasy, and I don't think that I personally would repeat that sequence again had I the chance to rewrite the picture, but I wrote it when I was 18 years old.
Where on earth did you get the inspiration from at that age to do that kind of thing?
To write horror pictures specifically? Well, I've always enjoyed horror movies, and I've always enjoyed a good horror book, being scared. I think a lot of people enjoy that, so I just decided to give it a shot myself.
You still seem to have in that film an obsession with mutilating the human form. I mean, is that what's necessary these days to bring the thousands of people into the cinemas to watch that kind of movie?
Actually, Evil Dead is a story of demonic spirits, and it's really a battle of man versus monster. And it's the monsters that are attacked and destroyed and dispatched in the Evil Dead pictures.
Let me bring in Gerald Howarth. We'll talk about the fact that you tried to get a private member's bill through to stop that kind of thing being seen on the screens. Is there a place, do you think, anywhere in British cinema for films like Evil Dead 1 or 2?
Well, Mr. Raimi says that it's a film that was designed to show the goodies getting at the evil chaps. I think that's actually really rather a load of whitewash. I don't think it was at all. I think it was an attempt at gratuitous violence. I hadn't had a look at all his film, but I have seen some of it, and I've certainly seen an extract from Evil Dead 2, I think it's called. And it strikes me as the rather true-to-life pictures of people vomiting blood and blood all over their face and their bodies mutilated. I don't think actually is the kind of thing that certainly would be shown on video. I think in the cinema, it's a different thing. If adults want to go and see a film which has been passed by the BBFC and classified as 18, where there is some say on who actually goes in to see the films in terms of age, that's one thing. But these things then become available on video, and they are available in the home. Now, the audience here, when they saw the films tonight, the extracts, they all tittered. And I quite understand, because it's absurd. But when you see it quietly, in the confines as I did earlier tonight, just myself watching it, and some of the gruesome, grotesque and gratuitous violence, simply for the sake of showing violence, when you see that, not only did it make me feel sick, but also it quite clearly is working away at people's sensitivities. The more you shock people, the more it takes to shock them. And that's what we're doing, and in videos, you have no control over who sees videos. Television has a watershed, the cinema has a sort of filter at the gates so that people under the given age don't get in, whereas videos are seen at home. And irresponsible parents, no parents should be responsible, but irresponsible parents leaving these videos lying around for their kids to watch, there is a lot of evidence that this causes direct damage and harm.
Let me find out if anybody's actually seen any of the Evil Dead films in the audience, have they? Anyone at all? Yeah, let me just tell you something. We've got a slight problem. Uri Geller strikes again, I think, because not only did our telephones pack in, but in fact our VT cutting panel upstairs, which means we can only come to certain cameras. So if you're talking in the audience, we can't actually see you, but you're very welcome to chip in at any stage if you'd like to. Can you just tell us what you actually thought of the film?
I thought it was excellent. I thought it was possibly the best horror picture I've ever seen. I think you've got to, when you go to see a horror picture, you're not necessarily going to see entertainment, inverted commas. You're buying a ticket, if you like, for an endurance test. I mean, it's like getting on a roller coaster. You don't particularly want to go round faster and faster in circles, getting nowhere, being scared, but you like being scared. So you go into the picture and you like to be scared.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, actually, because we've only got this camera left. So if I come over and actually stand quite close, did you want to say something, sir?
Yes, Andy, I do. Look. There's been a lot of talk about trees attacking people. I don't think there's rape in that scene. I've seen the movie. But I don't remember in 1939 people sitting, well, it wasn't television, but screaming on radio, look, the trees came alive and threatened Dorothy, Judy Garland, no less. People are losing their sense of humour. These are horror comics. They're not meant to be taken seriously. I'd be a lot more worried if my kids, when they were young, saw news at 6 o'clock which showed bloody violence in the streets of Belfast, because how can they tell that's just a movie? It isn't just a movie, it's real life. People are just taking this a little too seriously, a little too pompously.
OK, let me bring in another gentleman on the front row, if we can come over here. Again, we've got the only one camera. Jamie Bogle is from the National Viewers and Listeners Association. Now, are we taking this far too seriously?
Well, I think, if I may just say so, about Sam Raimi's film, I think it probably has all the charm and sophistication of a speech by Joseph Goebbels, and about the same sort of social usefulness. I mean, the thing that you've got to bear in mind is that the scenes that we saw tonight are only small excerpts from the film. You haven't actually seen the very worst of it by any means. The best. It's, you know, a great deal worse than that. And to watch it, as Gerald Howarth said, non-stop for some length of time, it certainly does have an effect on one, I think, and this is the thing that we're concerned about. I mean, it's an inescapable fact that the media of any sort, and particularly video,
is there any evidence at all that though these films
I was just going to come to, actually.
Cause harm?
There is a great deal of evidence. I mean, I think that the greatest evidence of all, as far as the media is concerned, is the fact that television and other forms of media must be having an effect on our behaviour, otherwise advertisers, for example, will not pay such vast sums of money in order to advertise on them. So I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind, if you really come down to it, but the fact that all forms of media do influence us in some way. Now, obviously, they only influence us to a certain degree, but if you live on this sort of thing, you have a diet of it, it becomes addictive, it does start to affect your behaviour. And there is no doubt that this has happened.
Sitting next to you is a great fan of horror movies. Are you addicted to them, and has it affected your behaviour? You've got an Aliens badge on, I see there, and a dead T-shirt as well.
I've been watching horror films for many, many years now, just purely out of interest to start with, and gradually I discovered that the more I watched, the interest was actually in the effects. That people wanted to see, you know, what kind of monsters would appear in each sufficient movie. I think the problem is that the rating system, which was brought up earlier for films that you can go to in the cinema, I'm just going to sit
down because we've got the cameras back now,
is already extended to videos, so that you can go into a shop and every video now has an 18 certificate if it's either a horror or a sex movie. So I don't think that the same arguments that we shouldn't have videos available like this should be raised. It is up to the retailers who are selling the videos to forbid children under the age of 18 from taking these videos home.
Yeah, but I mean, the trouble with that is, you see, that if it doesn't matter what age a person is that they go and buy these videos, they are going to be then out of the shop, in which case they're then going to get into the hands of children. It is an inescapable fact. You are going to have that happen. What are you going to do about it?
Let's ask Gerald Howarth. I mean, what can be done to actually stop these things getting into the hands of youngsters who might be influenced by them?
Well, I do think there's a very difficult question that we all have to address ourselves to here, which is the freedom of our friend here to go and watch what he regards as being the equivalent of a roller coaster. I quite understand, and to a certain extent I would agree with him. But what I don't think anybody who has really looked at this issue seriously has addressed themselves to is the free availability of the video cassette and its intrusion into the home. And we saw those girls screaming at that sudden horror bit, and they were all sort of falling over themselves. But they were all together. They were sort of taking comfort with one another, and that's what you do in the cinema. I remember seeing the Godfather and the horse in the bed scene, and you know, I clutched my girlfriend and my best friend on the other side. But I mean, when you're sitting in your own drawing room, it's a different story, and we do have to address ourselves, I'm afraid, to this difficult question of having the these things freely available to children. And I know it sounds a bit nanny state-ish. I quite accept that. But on the other hand, there is, I think, a general view, not just amongst the general public, but also some of the experts, that an endless diet of violence on the box, on the video, is going to have an impact on the children. I mean, at the Toxteth riots, for example, Lord Scarman said in his report that copycat violence was a factor. And I think that, that every realistic person does accept this. And I rather pose more questions than I present solutions.
Except from Sam Raimi's point of view, that this is really just fantasy in a lot of cases. I mean, what's the new film like?
The new picture is a horror movie also. Of course, it's a continuation of the first Evil Dead, story of demonic spirits that are raised from the ancient Sumerian Book of the Dead, and it's pretty much a ghost and monster picture.
Yeah, but that blood is pretty lifelike. When you see that blood spurting out of their mouths,
but you could have said
you don't see the old the sort of Hammer movie scene rocking in the background because it's a rather sort of cheap production. I mean, it's all very lifelike, and I think that is a problem. I mean, Sam Raimi himself says that he can't take a diet of
he does say he's getting a bit fed
longer.
up with it, didn't you? Actually, say you're getting a bit fed up with making these with blood.
It's having an effect on him.
No,
From the age of 18, perhaps.
I wouldn't say that I'm through making horror pictures, just that I don't think that I'd put that particular sequence of the woman in the woods, because I didn't enjoy that particular
Would you let your
it.
kids watch anything at all like this? Have you got any children?
I would rather that they watched horror movies. I'd rather that they lived in a free society where they have the ability to watch those horror movies, rather than in a society...
Than the Flintstones, I think.
Well, rather than in a society where censorship or a group of people is determining for me what I can and cannot show my children.
Well, can I just make a point there? I mean, this old hoary thing of censorship is absolute nonsense. Censorship is going on all the time, and it's going on in this studio. I mean, for instance, if you take that microphone away from me, nobody will be able to hear a thing I say. That is the kind of censorship that is going to happen, whatever Sam Raimi does. But the point is, we're not talking about censorship, we're simply talking about standards in the media and how the media affects behaviour and the level of social violence, and there is no doubt that it does affect the level of social violence.
There is a doubt. There is no...
No, there's no doubt at all, I'm afraid.
What study do you base that on,
There
sir?
are at least 700 or 800 different pieces of independent evidence upon which to base that. But the most common sense thing is what I said before.
Name one.
Advertisers would not spend money, the vast sums that they do on television, if it didn't influence people's behaviour. A continual diet of anything, media or whatever it is going to affect people's behaviour. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah, but is there one example?
The police recently had a press conference in Brixton, and they said, and I quote, that now knives are used 22 times a week in Brixton, and they said that they are trying to mount a campaign to de-glamorise, their own word, the use of knives, because now the types of knives that are used are not just sort of Boy Scout knives, but butcher's knives and all the rest of that sort of thing, which they've obviously
Are you
got.
saying that the likes of Sam Raimi... Are you saying that the likes of Sam Raimi is responsible for this directly?
I think that the sorts of films that he makes have a very considerable contribution towards that situation, yes. And I think, therefore, that they are irresponsible films, and with all due respect to Sam Raimi, I think he's being extremely irresponsible in making that sort of a film, and it behoves us, really, to do something about it.
Let Sam respond to that.
Well, it's possible. I do agree with you that films can influence people.
Thank you.
But I do believe that in the horror movies that I make, violence is specifically portrayed to create a feeling of horror from the audience. Unlike some television shows which do glamorize violence, possibly, and could make it more attractive. Specifically, it's a horror movie because you're afraid of it. And so I disagree with you that this type of picture would make someone want to emulate that type of violence. I know that there is no conclusive study as to the nature of violence on films.
I'm afraid there is.
The gentleman on the front row has been desperate to
in the United
comment.
States.
Sorry, yeah,
Yes.
I mean, the National Viewers List Association is always, they get themselves well into the public eye, and they talk, I'm afraid, a lot of rubbish. I'm sorry.
No,
I've seen Mr. Raimi's films. I've written 4 books on horror movies. I've seen horror movies all my
It's all
life.
very well slinging off at the National
Okay, right. Well, you've become
let's
a
see what the
self.
effect is in society.
Yeah, it's an effect in society. I've seen enough horror
22
films.
times a week now.
Sorry, I've seen
Gentlemen,
enough
one at
horror
a time,
films.
and then we can hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I've seen enough horror films to last me a lifetime. I have to enjoy them. I write books about them. I don't believe I've ever seen kids building monsters in basements. I do not believe I've never been
But they
attacked
use
by a
knives.
tree. For God's sake, they
And
use
they
knives
use
to cut their
different,
knives and
they don't
forks.
just use Boy Scout knives, they're now using butcher's knives
You're
and
suggesting-
hunting knives.
But you're suggesting
And
horror films which
and
are
it's not
fairy
you
tales
saying
for
this,
adults.
this is the police in Brixtonhurst.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're confusing things. That's violence.
I don't think I'm confusing things at
You
all.
really think? I mean, have you seen Mr. Raimi's film?
I've seen bits of it, enough of it,
No, you haven't seen
not want to
enough.
see a great deal
if you
more.
can show me the person with a knife who's doing a Brixton-style attack, then I might agree.
Go and
with
ask the
you.
police in
I've seen
Brixton.
one
They will
tonight.
show you.
I don't think the
Having
police
a
in
look at an
Brixton have
extract
ever
of it,
accused
it's
Mr. Raimi.
huge great knife.
They may not have accused him personally.
Let's have a comment from a few more people in the audience. The gentleman at the back there has got his hand up with the gentleman with the white shirt and the what colour tie is it? Maroon, is it?
Yeah. It's not so much a case of horror, people going there to be frightened. People go to see these films to get kicks. People live on getting kicks. This is why I agree with the National Viewers and Listeners Association, not necessarily wholeheartedly, but the whole thing's about kicks. It's the same with all sorts. Horror films, sex films are the same. You know, a sexy film 30 years ago would have a 30-second kiss in it. Now, people aren't interested in that because it's old hat. They want it more and more, you know, so things become more explicit.
Pushing the boundaries.
And as they become more explicit, people become more used to those. And so, to a certain extent, the film satisfies the person's urge for kicks, but it can only go so far. The film can only get so nasty.
All right.
And once it's got so nasty, then people got to go further for the kick.
Wants to comment on that?
Well, I tend to agree with the two men down the front here. I think it's all a matter of taste, really. If you want to watch a film, you'll watch it no matter what. And if you want your children to watch it, then that's entirely up to you. But, I mean, when I was a kid and I watched horror movies, it frightened me to death. But looking back now, yeah, you can tell. But now looking back on it, they're funny.
Yeah,
and
but
I think children, hold on a minute, you've had your say, let's have our say. Children nowadays look upon a movie now as a bit of fun. I've seen children watch horror movies and they laugh at them.
What about, I mean, in Evil Dead 2, I mean, there's some shots of a woman being battered round the head with a post. I mean, is that fun?
Is that any worse than watching the news at 6 o'clock and somebody hitting somebody with a stick? Hitting a policeman with a stick?
Yes,
that's what you've got to ask, isn't it?
For a start, it doesn't go on, for the news at 10 doesn't go, or whatever, news at 6
Yes,
doesn't go
but
on
that's
for
real.
quite the same time. But to a certain extent, yes, I would agree with you. Insofar as explicit violence is being shown on news at 6, I think, and it's a time when children are going to be watching the television, I think this is a reprehensible thing. And one of the interesting things, I mean, somebody mentioned Northern Ireland. One of the things, you've only got to go across there and talk to the people, especially talk to the police, talk to anyone over there who's had any experience of what's going on there, and you will find that people are inured to the violence. They have got used to it. And there are greater and greater levels of violence that have to occur before anything that causes
I'll come
people
back to one or two more on the front row in a moment. But let the lady right at the back and the far side have a say.
I agree. I don't agree with that guy over there that it's just for kicks. What it basically boils down to is that guy that writes about it and that guy that makes a profit out of it. And all this violence against women and all the blood and the gut is for profit. It's basically profit.
Well, Sam, presumably it is for profit. I mean, presumably you make it so that people actually pay to go and see it.
No, I make the pictures primarily to entertain the audience. That is my goal. And on Evil Dead, the motion picture...
Why don't you make it free viewing, then?
On Evil Dead, the motion picture, I actually went into debt to be able to make that movie.
But you also said that to get investors, you first of all make them sick, and then they invest. I mean, that's the nature of your films. I mean, I don't want to stop you making films, my friend. I mean, if you want to make films like that, I mean, go ahead. What I think is really objectionable is to dress it up as entertainment. It isn't. I mean, this guy here is unquestionably entertained by it. But some of those scenes, we're not talking about the horror films of of 30 or 40 years ago, which were removed from reality.
No, they were
Because
just as outrageous then as these are now.
Yeah, but showing these guys with blood vomiting out of the mouths, not of the puppets, the vomit out of the mouths of the actual actors, the live people, and the grotesque mutilations to their bodies. I mean, what do you not think? I mean, let me pose this question to you. Do you not think that an endless diet of that, or let's say a frequent diet of that, is not going to inure people to it, as one of the, as Jamie Bogle said, is it not going to inure people to it? And how much further are you going to have to go in Evil Dead 3? And how much further than that in Evil Dead 4?
Well, if there is an Evil Dead 3, I was thinking about bringing the Evil Dead to Britain, tell you the truth.
Hey, listen, bring it here.
Would you please take it back again?
You know, throughout the history of literature and entertainment, there has always been horrible acts of violence, from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, his wife swallowing the hot coal. What I fear is that the repression, and Macbeth, of course, all the murders that took place. I'm a big fan of Shakespeare. What I'm worried about really is the repression of the arts, and that's really.
No, this is a red herring. There's no question of repression of the arts.
All right, he's a little bit outnumbered tonight here. Would you like to respond to that on the front there?
Well, I mean, I'd just like to say that I must have seen thousands of people on videos and films being sort of chopped and mangled and minced, and I can tell you that there's absolutely nothing wrong with me.
I think the viewers at home decide that.
I told you it's like getting on a roller coaster. You go on for the scare.
Can I just say
yes,
something?
please
I was
do.
involved in the previous situation on a more serious note. I've been involved in real-life horror, and believe me, that's far worse than anything you see on the screen.
Yes, but there's no parallel.
If you go around and speak to people in this audience or outside the studio, most of them will say, well, they believe they can decide for themselves what they want to see and what they don't want to see. I mean, quite honestly, I treat them as ludicrous because that's just what they are. To me, there is a certain amount of entertainment in it. But I think what we have to be concerned with here, because again, I have a further interest. I'm head of a school, and I'm responsible for children. Now, at what stage would you honestly believe that a child can distinguish between what he sees on the screen as being fact and fantasy? And how does it influence him?
Well,
Now, can I ask you another question? Can you remember, I don't suppose you can you remember when you first became interested in this subject matter, and at what level? Obviously,
yeah, I can,
you've gained an appetite for it, and you would say to me, and I would agree with you, that you feel that you are quite capable of taking it. You're not going to go outside this studio. You know, if you were to see a film now, you're not going to go outside and perform the same act upon someone else.
Do you believe me?
All right,
I do. But what I would be concerned with is the availability of this material, freely available.
Well, it's probably, I mean, if you rent it from a video distributor, and I take it that is the main objection, that's the main argument. I mean, they do all have to have certificates now. You can't just if you're
Those certificates
10,
are a complete load of rubbish.
No, they're not.
Well,
because if you're 10 and you try and rent an 18
are.
certificate,
Children of 10 don't.
Can I ask you something as a headmaster?
Yes.
When would you let your kids read Hansel and Gretel, which tries to bake a couple of kids in an oven?
Well, Hansel and Gretel isn't. I mean, you're a little bit out of touch.
No, come on. That's all most horror movies are. Hansel and Gretel made into movies.
no, or Coriolanus.
It's completely.
Or Little Red Riding Hood.
Different.
I mean, she's
it's a
got a
different
werewolf
medium.
after.
Look,
No,
if I could use some of the means that are used on video,
we're rapidly running short of time here. I just like the lady
I would have
in
a great deal more success. But are you saying to me then that there is absolutely no harm in them at all, and that young people are not influenced?
No, what I'm saying is a parental responsibility.
Thanks very much indeed for that.
Well,
I was going to inform. Excuse me, Alan.
Alan.
Alan, thanks. So just a second. Sam, we're rapidly running short of time. We brought you here from the States. Would you like just to sort of have a few final words about what you've heard this evening? I mean, are we ready for Evil Dead 2 here, do you think? Or indeed the making of Evil Dead 3 here?
Well, what I'd like to just say is that I know that there are no conclusive results of tests as to the effects of motion picture violence versus real violence. I know that there are still studies going on, and that there have been never any conclusive results. I make pictures to entertain people, and horror movies are specifically designed to scare people. And possibly it's a good thing that you can sit in a theater and get your adrenaline pumping and scream and have a hooting good time. My movies are not realistic violence. I have walls bleeding orange, blue, black, yellow, and green paint. And I've got skulls that fly around and spirits that zoom about a cabin.
Right.
And it's just a kind of it's kind of more surrealistic, I think, than a realistic portrayal of violence.
There's a lot of realistic
Well, I
stuff
have to
in
say
there.
that actually, come Friday night shortly on ITV, we will be having the Friday Nightmare, reviving all the old Hammer horrors, etc. And I hope you'll be able to tell the difference between that and Central Weekend.